Hello, this is Dr. Bill Williams, and we're here in the frozen South. That's right, it's below freezing. It's 14 degrees today on this wonderful deep freeze we're having across the country. But we're having a conversation with the co-founder of Flame Princess Confections, Jeni, Lady Gaganja Cohen, on the Influencers podcast. So let me bring her on. This is Jeni. Hello, Jeni.
Hi there. Thanks for
How
having
are
me. I
how are
appreciate it.
things doing in the cold north?
Well, I'm in Chicago, and the feels like temperature outside currently 32. My dogs are not pleased. Neither am I.
Oh,
But
it is terribly cold around the country, but we're going to warm them up today with our show.
right,
Your
absolutely.
information. Let's start now with where you were, what happened, and who were you surrounded by that inspired you to do what you do today?
Um, well, I was born and raised in Miami, Florida. I've been in Chicago for about 20 years. I went to college in New Orleans. I was heavily influenced by the matriarchs in my family who are all excellent cooks. And I learned a lot from them. I am both Cuban and Jewish, so I had a lot of different cultural foods to learn from, and brought that all together. I was in the corporate world for about a decade before I opened my first restaurant, and that was over a decade ago now. So I've been in the food world for a long time, and it's really what I'm most passionate about. Um, and that's what led me to the food aspect of it. I have been a cannabis consumer for my entire adult life. Um, I find I get a lot of relief from that in a lot of ways. I'm not a big alcohol consumer at all. I find my stress relief with cannabis. And when COVID hit, I found that that fusion really was able to come together for me in creating Flame Princess Confections and coming up with some high end, unique items for either experienced or kind of curious consumers as well.
Well, I think you captured some people's imagination with that.
Yeah.
Tell me the top three reasons why people fail.
Um, Authenticity, I would say, is a big one. I'm a huge fan of the author Brene Brown, and if you're familiar with a lot of her books, one of the most popular ones is one called Daring Greatly, and it's about stepping into the arena and fighting for what you believe in and taking risks. So I feel people who aren't authentic um, fail because they're faking it and they can't maintain that for so long. I think people who don't take risks fail. Um, I think that if you aren't willing to put yourself out there and you only want to, as Brene calls it, like sit on the sidelines and observe and criticize from the sidelines without putting yourself in the arena and taking those risks yourself, that often leads to failure. And I think arrogance a lot of times leads to failure. I think one of the most important things out there is that um, we all know that we don't all have all the answers, right? It's important to realize that we're all doing our best. And I think people that are too arrogant a lot of times um, don't have success for that reason.
Absolutely. When people fail, they learn a lot. So I want to ask you the question of the day about failure is what's your greatest failure story and what did you learn? How did you recover from it?
Um, I mean, failure story, there's many of them. um, I mean, I had two restaurants. I don't have two restaurants anymore. Is that a failure? Sure, in some regard. I I had to make a choice, and that choice was to close my restaurants and move in a different direction because of where my partnership was going. And I knew that I had to make a decision as to whether or not I was going to close my restaurants or keep them going on my own um, in the split with my partners, and I had to choose to close them um, because I knew that in the recovery, I knew that to be able to recover from that, um, I needed the confidence and to be reminded that a lot of the success that the restaurant had was due to the skills and the time and the energy and the team that I had created around it. And that if I was going to be able to be successful in the future, I had to remind myself that I had those skills and I had that ability so that I could then do it again later on. And that's what I found was really important.
Yeah, success comes from learning from failure. So let's move into what are your top three success secrets that others can model from to
Oh man.
learn from what your experience is.
Success secrets. Well, I think um, success is seen in different ways by different people, right? Like I wouldn't necessarily always call myself all that successful. Um, but at the same time, um, when we talk about what causes people to fail, how do we learn from those three things that I mentioned earlier, right? To me, authenticity, being your truest, most real self, is by far the most important thing I would ever tell anyone. Um, Number two is not necessarily a success secret, but maybe just a secret in general, is that so many of us suffer from imposter syndrome. So many of us think that we don't deserve to get the recognition that we get, that we shouldn't be as high up as we are, that we shouldn't have gotten that promotion. Like maybe we didn't work that hard, or maybe I don't know all of these things. So I think knowing that everyone else in the room oftentimes is also suffering from that same thought process is really important to remember. Um, and staying grounded, right? Like I talked about arrogance earlier as a possibility for failure and something that causes failure. Staying grounded, I think, is something that's really important when it comes to being successful.
Excellent. And I think if we put those points to work in our life, things will be better. And
I agree.
when let's move into what motivates you internally. You know, we want to go through our lightning round now of
Oh boy, I'm ready.
really what your mindset is. Right off the top of your head, what do you think?
My chosen family, I'd say, those the people I surround myself with are what keeps me motivated.
So, what's your company motto?
I wouldn't say we officially have one, but I would say introducing or reintroducing people to a new era of cannabis.
Okay. Your ideal client is who?
Someone who is a canna consumer or a canna curious consumer, who is willing to learn some of the new facets of what cannabis has to offer.
How do you find your ideal client?
Networking, talking to people, just constantly putting myself out there and again taking risks.
Absolutely. So, you have well defined products and services. I would like to know what those are.
Yeah, we make packaged goods. We also provide catering services and do infused events and non-infused events here in the Chicagoland area.
Do you go beyond your local area for sales?
Not for party stuff. Yeah, we keep the party stuff all here in Chicago. But hopefully soon we'll be on store shelves one day in dispensaries. That's the goal. I'm going to answer this next question because I can't hear you. Um, why should someone buy from me? Um, I think because we find quality to be the most important thing, and we want education and quality in cannabis, and we want people to be familiar with what cannabis has to offer, and not and break the stigma on it.
Makes sense. So, tell me about your competition. How do you crush them?
Well, in the legal cannabis arena, it's really hard because there's so many political thresholds that you have to go through. But authenticity and branding, and knowing what your customer wants and solving a problem for them.
And do you have to handle objections?
Oh my gosh. I mean, there's so many political things to crawl through, but then there's also, I mean, obviously your regular customer rejections if someone chooses something else other than what it is that you're providing for them. And you have
Absolutely.
to take it all with a grain of salt. It's part of the process. It's part of the learning process.
How do you handle your anger crying?
Um, with grace as much as possible. Sometimes it's hard, you know. Sometimes you have to be, you have to be diligent. Sometimes you're right and sometimes they're right, and you have to make sure that they understand what they're getting and that you're giving them as much information as possible.
Yeah. So how do you deliver that 5-star client experience?
Attention to detail, communication, um, and being authentic. I think again, when you're faking it, people know and they can tell.
They can tell.
Yeah.
How do you convert your clients into brand ambassadors, most importantly?
Um, I've had a lot of success with that, without necessarily putting the energy behind it, that with that being my goal. I think it's because you really want people to believe in your product. And when you show that you believe in your product, they believe in your product. And then they instinctively also, promote your product because of that.
Yeah. Other than your warm heater, what do you feel grateful for today?
I'm going to go back to my chosen family. If it wasn't for the people around me, I wouldn't be here. So it's definitely, I'm really lucky to have such a great community of people around me.
Excellent. How do you start your day?
Cuddling with my French bulldogs, a morning meditation, and some coffee, and then off to it. My partner gets up super early in the morning, so I'm a pretty early bird.
Gotcha. So what's your plan to achieve your goal?
Um, I think in cannabis, my goal is always changing because as the laws change, there's a lot of changing happening. So, where other people may have like a 5 or a 10-year goal in regards to where they want their product to go, I would say our brand, we've changed our goal, 3 times in the last year because the laws keep changing, because we keep learning about new opportunities in different states that perhaps weren't legal before. So, we really want to let the industry kind of help us learn and help carve that path for us.
It is a new day.
Yeah.
So what's your plan to achieve your goal?
Keep nose to the grindstone, realistically, and keep communicating with people and keep building and fostering great relationships.
Hmm. And how would you feel if you couldn't achieve that goal?
I've not achieved a lot of goals before. It's hard. It's okay though. You have to keep pushing and you have to remind yourself that it's all part of your story. It's all part of the process. It's just another chapter in the book. So moving forward, there have been a lot of failures, but I wouldn't be where I was today without those failures.
The challenges, how do you overcome them and move on?
Support, I think sometimes some are harder than others. Some take a little more time to recover from than others. I'm grateful again, not for just for my community, but for my customers and my support base of people who just remind me um, that we're doing something special and to keep moving forward.
Okay, once you have a revenue generating idea, which you definitely have, how do you convince your significant other?
As in like my life partner or my
Yeah,
business partner?
either.
I think my life partner at this point is pretty aware of all my crazy ideas. So I don't think he gets surprised anymore. But in regards to my business partner, it's really funny because like sometimes one of us will have an idea and the other one won't be so hot on it. And then like you just think about it for a little bit and all of a sudden it just starts to grow and grow and grow. And you're like, oh my gosh, that is a great idea. That's brilliant. I can't believe I didn't think of that. So I mean, that's why we have each other is to be similar, but to also kind of carve our own paths and have unique experiences and ideas that we can then bring back to the table and then keep moving forward.
Okay, think back when you were 20 years old. What would you give advice about yourself to yourself?
Um, Nobody has all the answers. Everyone's faking it until they make it. It's okay. You'll get there.
Yeah. So who's your living mentor, and what would be their impact on you?
Living mentor. I feel like I use this one a lot, and I don't even know if she knows this or not because she's a good friend of mine. But I have a pinup model friend of mine named Doris Mayday. She's absolutely brilliant and gorgeous, and I've spent a lot of time with her at different events. And she's pretty well known in like the vintage and retro community. So when I'm with her, she gets stopped a lot by people who want to interact with her and take their photo with her. And the way that she chooses to interact with others when they stop her, to me, has been one of the most influential things in my adult life because I watch her interact with someone who's very anxious and very nervous and afraid to ask, to take their picture with her. And she totally grounds them immediately and reminds
Oh,
them, that they're also participating. So if we're at a special dress up event, she'll say, oh, and what's your name? Like, I love your outfit today. Like, thank you so much for coming to the event. And just reminds them that it's okay to have a regular dialogue. And I think when you're, a public person, whether that's super famous or not, whatever the degree is, if you're a public persona, um, it's your responsibility as an influencer to to engage people, right? People recognize you, people know that you're there. And so as an influencer, it's so important to connect with those people and tell them, thank you for participating. Thank you for being here. Because if it wasn't for all of you, we wouldn't be here either. And so I think in an influencer world, it's critical. And the way that she engages with people like that really is also inspiring to me.
yeah, I can tell she's impactful. How
Yeah.
can we support you, Jenny?
Just keep doing what you're doing. Highlighting people like this, I think, is a really great thing. I think it exposes so many more people to little niche communities that are out there. And I mean, what's more special than that, than people finding their special community of people that are into what they're into? Ooh, what would I say about my guest experience on the show? Well, I think it's been great. Thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely. I love the questions. I think it's really intriguing and really gets me thinking, and hopefully it's influential to others. As a final word, um, just thank you. I appreciate this. I think influencers can be really important. You can't hear me, or I can't hear you. um, and I think it's important for a lot of people who feel lost sometimes to reconnect um, with really special people in social media. I think the internet isn't all bad, and I think you can really find a really special community of people who can really help you get through, sometimes, especially when it's negative 32 degrees outside. So thank you again for having me.
Thank you, Jenny. Excellent time visiting with you today from Chicago.
Thank
And I
you.
wish you well. And may everyone who's listening find that peace and joy of the season. And we will look forward to seeing you all. And Jenny, thank you for being with us. This is Dr. Bill Williams on the Influencers Podcast. And nothing better than to finish up the season, to finish up 2022 with a word from our friends like Jenny. Thank you so much for attending, everyone. And stay tuned for the next Influencers Podcast.